If you thought OTF was untouchable, think again. Because behind the scenes, while fans were arguing online and music kept dropping like nothing was wrong, something private slipped out, and the moment it did, everything changed. A leaked audio clip. Not meant for the public. Not meant for fans. And definitely not meant to have Durk's name in it. The moment whispers of that recording started spreading, the energy shifted. Phones started ringing. Group chats went silent. People who never panic suddenly moved like they had something to lose. Fans were shocked, insiders went quiet, and the internet did what it always does. It filled the gaps with speculation, theories, and raw emotion. Because when a private conversation leaks, it's never just about what was said. It's about why it was said, who heard it, and who wasn't supposed to. Some say the audio revealed cracks inside OTF that were never meant to be seen. Others claim it exposed tensions that had been buried for years. And then there's the biggest question of all. Why did Durk's name surface in a conversation that was supposed to stay locked away? What started as a rumor quickly turned into panic. And once the audio surfaced, there was no putting it back. The moment the leaked audio became a rumor, the tone inside OTF shifted in ways fans couldn't immediately see. Publicly, everything looked normal. Music releases continued, social media posts stayed polished, and silence was framed as strength. But privately, emotions ran high. Phones buzzed non-stop, trusted names were questioned, and old loyalties suddenly felt fragile. The audio wasn't supposed to exist outside a tight circle, and the fact that it slipped out suggested something deeper was wrong. People close to the situation whispered that this wasn't just a leak, it was a breach. And breaches don't happen without consequences. Inside the circle, panic didn't look like shouting or chaos. It looked like restraint. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Meetings were postponed. Certain names were avoided entirely. Those who heard the audio firsthand described it as raw, unfiltered, and uncomfortable. Not because of what it revealed outright, but because of what it implied. The tone, the pauses, the frustration in the voices hinted at internal pressure building long before the public ever noticed. Fans were shocked when fragments of the story began surfacing, but insiders knew this tension had been growing quietly. What made the situation worse was how Durk's name entered the conversation. According to whispers, it wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was casual, almost careless. And that's what scared people. When a name that powerful comes up in a private setting without caution, it signals either trust or desperation. Neither option sat well with everyone involved. Some felt exposed. Others felt betrayed. A few reportedly felt relieved, believing the truth was finally cracking through layers of silence. But relief didn't last long once they realized the audio was no longer contained. As the hours passed, reactions began spreading outward. Friends noticed sudden changes in tone. Family members sensed stress without being told why. Even fans started picking up on subtle cues. A delayed post here. A vague caption there. Nothing concrete, but enough to spark theories. Emotions ran high as people tried connecting dots without knowing the full picture. The family was left divided on how to respond. Some pushed for silence, believing attention would only make things worse. Others felt silence was exactly what allowed situations like this to grow unchecked. Behind closed doors, arguments reportedly broke out over trust. Who had the recording? Who shared it? Who failed to protect it? Accusations flew quietly, not in public outbursts, but in cold, measured conversations that hurt more than shouting ever could. People who had stood side by side for years now questioned each other's intentions. One voice allegedly said, "This was never supposed to leave the room." Another responded, "Then someone wanted it to." That sentence alone changed the energy, because it suggested intent, not accident. Meanwhile, the audio itself took on a life of its own. Even those who hadn't heard it felt its impact. The idea of it was enough. Fans debated what it could contain. Critics speculated about motives. Supporters defended names without knowing what was actually said. And through it all, the silence from OTF only amplified the mystery. Fans were shocked by how quickly the narrative spun out of control. The lack of clarity didn't calm the situation, it fueled it. Every hour without a response felt louder than the last. Privately, some insiders argued the leak was being exaggerated. They claimed the audio wasn't as damaging as people thought, that it was being taken out of context, that emotions were high when it was recorded. But others disagreed strongly. They believed context didn't matter once something private became public. Perception became reality. And perception was already forming fast. One source allegedly said, "It's not about what was said. It's about who was listening when it was said." That idea stuck, spreading quietly through conversations. As night turned into morning, pressure mounted. Calls were made to contain the fallout. Advisors weighed in. Decisions were delayed. Everyone wanted control, but no one wanted responsibility. The leak had created a situation where every move felt risky. Speak, and confirm the drama. Stay silent, and let speculation grow. Fans watched closely, reading between lines, analyzing every move. Emotions ran high on all sides, because this wasn't just about music anymore. It was about loyalty, trust, and what happens when private truth collides with public curiosity. Some believed the audio leak was the result of long-standing resentment. Others felt it was a warning shot, a reminder that nothing stays hidden forever. Family members worried about safety. Friends worried about reputation. Fans worried about the future of something they believed in. And through it all, Durk's name lingered in the background like an unresolved echo. Not addressed. Not denied. Just present. The uncertainty surrounding that single detail made everything heavier. As the story continued to spread, one thing became clear. This wasn't going away quietly. The leak had opened a door that couldn't be closed. Even if the audio never fully surfaced, the damage was already done. Trust had been shaken. Lines had been crossed. And everyone involved knew that whatever happened next would change the dynamic forever. The calm before this moment was gone, replaced by something unstable, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. By the time the story reached its second day circulating online, the atmosphere around OTF felt heavier, tighter, like everyone was holding their breath at the same time. What started as whispers had now turned into speculation layered on speculation. Fans weren't just reacting anymore, they were dissecting. Screenshots, timestamps, old interviews, deleted posts, everything became evidence in a story no one fully understood. Emotions ran high because the silence felt intentional, and intentional silence always feels like something is being hidden. Inside the circle, conversations grew sharper. People who had once laughed together now spoke carefully, choosing words like they were walking through glass. Trust became the main argument. Who trusted who? Who shouldn't have? One voice reportedly questioned whether the leak was even the real problem, suggesting the real issue was what led to the conversation being recorded in the first place. That idea shifted the debate. If someone felt the need to record a private moment, that meant fear, doubt, or protection was already in play long before fans ever heard a rumor. Family reactions added another layer of pressure. Some relatives urged calm, reminding everyone that public drama had consequences that extended beyond music. Others felt anger, believing the leak disrespected years of loyalty and sacrifice. The family was left divided, torn between protecting their own and confronting the truth head-on. One person close to the situation allegedly said the hardest part wasn't the audio, but watching people choose sides without knowing the full story. That division cut deeper than any headline. Meanwhile, the fans' reactions grew louder. Comment sections filled with theories. Some defended OTF fiercely, calling the leak fake, staged, or exaggerated. Others believed it exposed cracks that had always been there. Emotions ran high as supporters argued with critics, each convinced they were protecting something important. The phrase "fans are shocked" stopped being dramatic language and became reality. People who felt connected to the music now felt personally invested in the outcome of this situation. As more time passed without clarity, the leak started shaping its own narrative. People weren't waiting for facts anymore. They were building stories based on tone, timing, and silence. A delayed response was seen as guilt by some and wisdom by others. Every move, or lack of move, was interpreted differently depending on who was watching. That uncertainty was exhausting for everyone involved. Insiders reportedly felt trapped between controlling the narrative and letting it burn out on its own. Behind the scenes, heated arguments reportedly broke out over strategy. Some pushed for a direct statement, believing transparency would calm the storm. Others warned that addressing it would only validate the rumors. The debate wasn't just about public relations, it was personal. Trust had already been damaged, and no statement could fix that overnight. Accusations surfaced quietly, not in public, but in private conversations filled with frustration and disbelief. One source allegedly described a moment where someone asked, "Who benefits from this?" That question lingered. Because leaks don't just happen, they travel. They move from one person to another, gaining intention along the way. Whether the leak was accidental or deliberate became less important than the fact that it had power. And power changes behavior. People started distancing themselves, watching their words, guarding their phones. The environment shifted from brotherhood to caution. The mention of Durk's name continued to hover like a shadow. Not confirmed, not denied, just existing in the background of every conversation. That silence was interpreted 1,000 different ways. Some believed it meant the situation was being handled privately. Others thought it meant things were worse than anyone wanted to admit. The lack of clarity made the story feel endless, like a loop that kept restarting with new speculation. At the same time, outside voices weighed in. Other artists, media personalities, and commentators hinted without saying too much. Their reactions added fuel without adding facts. Fans read between every line, every pause, every half-sentence. The narrative grew bigger than the original audio. It became about loyalty in the industry, about what happens when private truths collide with public personas. Emotions ran high because everyone saw a piece of themselves in the conflict. Inside OTF, people reportedly felt watched. Every step felt like it was being analyzed. Some worried about long-term damage, not just to reputations, but to relationships that had been built over years. Others felt anger, believing the leak was an act of betrayal that couldn't be undone. The family was left divided not just emotionally, but strategically. There was no single path forward that felt safe for everyone. As night fell again, exhaustion set in. Not physical exhaustion, but emotional. The constant pressure of speculation, the weight of silence, the fear of saying the wrong thing. Some insiders believed the storm would pass if they stayed quiet long enough. Others felt the longer they waited, the worse it would become. That tension created fractures, subtle but real. People began questioning not just what happened, but why they were in this position at all. Fans continued refreshing their feeds, waiting for something definitive. A statement, a denial, an explanation, anything. But nothing came. And in that absence, imagination filled the space. The leak, whether heard or not, had already done its work. It exposed vulnerability. It reminded everyone that behind the image, there were real people dealing with real consequences. And whatever happened next would determine whether this moment faded into rumor or reshaped the future permanently. By the third phase of the fallout, the panic had shifted into something colder and more calculated. The initial shock was gone. What remained was damage control. People inside the circle weren't asking what happened anymore. They were asking what could still be saved. That change alone spoke volumes. When a situation moves from confusion to containment, it means lines have already been crossed. Emotions still ran high, but now they were buried beneath strategy, silence, and carefully measured distance. The audio leak, whether fully heard or only rumored, had done its job. It fractured trust. Those closest to the situation reportedly stopped communicating the way they once had. Conversations became shorter. Meetings became smaller. Certain voices were no longer invited into rooms they once dominated. That shift didn't happen overnight, but everyone felt it. The energy changed. The laughter disappeared. The sense of unity that fans believed in began to feel more like a performance than a reality. What hurt most, according to whispers, was the feeling of exposure. Not to the public, but to each other. People began questioning past conversations, wondering what else might have been recorded, what else might resurface later. That paranoia spread quietly. Phones were left outside rooms. Messages were deleted instead of sent. The environment became defensive. And once a group reaches that point, rebuilding becomes nearly impossible without confrontation. Outside the circle, fans continued searching for answers. The story refused to die. Even without new information, the narrative evolved. People created timelines, imagined motives, and assigned blame. Some fans claimed the leak proved internal betrayal. Others believed it was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Emotions ran high because the silence from those involved felt intentional. Every day without a statement felt like confirmation to someone, even if no confirmation existed. Behind the scenes, some insiders reportedly pushed for a controlled release of information. Not the audio itself, but context. An explanation without details. A response without substance. The idea was to calm the noise without feeding it. Others strongly opposed that approach, believing any acknowledgement would reopen wounds. The disagreement caused further division. There was no consensus, only competing fears about what would cause more damage. As days passed, the pressure didn't ease. It shifted. Media coverage slowed, but the community conversations didn't. Fans debated loyalty, accountability, and the cost of silence. The story became symbolic, representing something bigger than a single leak. It turned into a conversation about power, control, and who truly holds influence behind the scenes. That broader interpretation made the situation harder to contain. Privately, some individuals reportedly felt regret. Not necessarily about the words spoken in the audio, but about trusting the wrong moment, the wrong room, or the wrong person. That regret didn't come with apologies. It came with withdrawal. People pulled back, choosing distance over dialogue. That distance spoke louder than any denial ever could. The mention of Durk's name, still unaddressed, remained the heaviest cloud. Not because of what it implied, but because of what it didn't clarify. Silence around that detail allowed every theory to survive. Some believed it meant protection. Others believed it meant pressure. The absence of clarity kept the story alive long after it should have faded. It became the unanswered question that framed every other detail. At the same time, the emotional toll began showing in subtle ways. Missed appearances, shortened interactions, vague statements that raised more questions than answers. Fans noticed. They always do. And when fans notice patterns, narratives form quickly. Emotions ran high because people felt they were watching something unravel in real time without being allowed to understand it. Within families connected to the situation, tension reportedly deepened. Some felt the leak disrespected everything that had been built. Others felt it forced long-avoided conversations into the open. The family was left divided between protecting the image and confronting uncomfortable truths. That divide wasn't public, but it was real. And real divisions leave lasting marks. As the noise slowly settled, one reality became impossible to ignore. Things would not return to how they were before the leak. Even if the audio was forgotten, the awareness remained. People now knew what was possible. They knew private moments could become public. They knew silence could be interpreted as guilt. That awareness changed behavior permanently. Fans continued revisiting old moments, old interviews, old reactions, searching for signs they might have missed. Every clip took on new meaning. Every pause felt intentional. The story had become layered, not because of facts, but because of perception. And perception, once formed, rarely disappears. Eventually, attention began drifting toward the future. Not answers, but outcomes. Would this cause long-term fractures? Would silence hold? Would more leaks surface? Those questions replaced the original mystery. The situation no longer felt like a single incident. It felt like a turning point. One that would quietly shape decisions moving forward. And now, it comes down to you. You've seen how fast a private moment can turn into public chaos. You've watched how silence can fuel speculation, how loyalty can be questioned, and how narratives form without confirmation. So what do you think really happened? Was the leak accidental or intentional? Was the silence smart or damaging? And does this situation change how you see everything that came before it? If you want more deep breakdowns like this, make sure you like the video so it reaches more people. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And most importantly, drop your thoughts in the comments. Because in stories like this, the conversation never really ends.